Hey guys, in today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to do a proper winterization on one of these 4.3 Mercruisers. Now in this video, I'm not going to be talking about doing the gear lube or anything like that, but it is part of the winterization we want to do. I'm just going to be strictly showing you just the motor part. So let's just jump right in the video and let's winterize this motor. So the first thing we're going to do is remove this fuel water separator located down here. And the reason we want to remove this is because we want to see if there's obviously any water in the fuel, because this is the purpose. It's supposed to separate the fuel and the water if you got any water in your tank. That way your engine doesn't get messed up. So what we're going to do is just remove this and we're going to install a new one. I recommend you guys do this at least once a year. They're only like $8 to $10 to replace these filters. Just replace them, and that way you can save your fuel system. But the part of the winterization process, we can use this to put a new one, and then we can run our own fuel treatment in the fuel filter, and that way we'll get the proper fuel treatment through the engine, and that way come springtime the engine will fire up. You won't have any issues with your fuel system. At the shop that I work at, the way we do our fuel treatment is we actually do a 6-gallon gas can, and we mix it with ethanol-free 90 gas, 2-stroke oil, fogging oil, and stabilizer, and then we pour in the fuel water separators, and then we can run the engine for about 15 to 20 minutes. If we're doing an oil change, we're not going to do an oil change on this engine just because the guy doesn't want to do it. We'll run the engine for about 30 minutes if we're doing an oil change to get the engine nice and warm and allow that fuel treatment to have time to get through the actual whole fuel system of the engine. So all I'm going to do now is just hook up some water to the engine, fire it up, and let it run for about 15 and 20 minutes, and I'll come back to you when we're ready to drain the engine. So now the engine's all warm, what we're going to do is start draining the blocks. The first one we'll remove is this one located right here under the big engine hose. So we're going to spin this blue plug out, and you're going to see all the water start pumping out. Just be ready because the water will be hot, so don't hold your hand there for too long. Now what we're going to do is jump to the other side while that is draining, and we're going to be draining both of these on this side. This one's going to be for the manifold, and this one's for the main block. Now what we're going to do is spin out the one for the block, because if you spin out the manifold one, it could burn your arm while you're trying to get the block one out. And again, you guys probably aren't going to be able to see this. Most boats, you can't actually see this stuff. You kind of work blind. For instance, I'm actually working blind here. I'm not actually looking or seeing any of this stuff I'm doing. I just have the camera position there. So just be ready to kind of work blind and be ready to move your hands pretty quick, so you can see all that steam coming from all that hot water out of the engine block from it running. While that's draining, we're going to hop onto the other side, on the starter side. And you can see here, again, there's one for the manifold and on the block. First one I'm going to spin out is going to be one for the block. That way, again, I don't burn myself. And you can see here, this guy must be running in some like the Chesapeake Bay or something like that, because this water's pretty dirty. Even the local lakes around here, we get some pretty nasty water. So you can even see for this manifold, all that nasty water coming right out of there. So now that all that's draining, what we can do is start removing all the 4 hoses located up here at the thermostat housing. And what we're going to do is, basically when we remove all these, we're going to be putting air pressure through all of them and blowing out all the water we possibly can. You'll be very surprised how much water will come out once you actually blow air through every single one of these hoses. A lot of people don't do this, and they just drain the block and they just expect all the water to come out, and that's just not the case. A lot of times you even have to go in there with a pick. This engine just kind of happenly was able to drain nicely, but even the added air pressure will definitely help it and get out all that water, because the V6s are very notorious of cracking, even with just a little bit of water that you left in there that you didn't even know was in there. So just do all this stuff, and that way you can save your engine. And then all I'm doing here is basically using a hose tool. You can use like a screwdriver or a flathead or anything like that, just to break the seals of the hoses, and that way it's easier to pull off. Even this thing I'm checking out in here, this basically is uses water pressure. It's almost like a check valve. And that way, when the water hits it, it'll open up and allow water to run to each of the risers on the manifolds. I just check these every time, just make sure they're not getting stuck, because if they do get stuck, the engine can overheat, and you don't want that to happen. So basically what you want to do is just break the seals of all these, especially on the big hose. The 2 ones I pulled off in the beginning, those were the 2 for the manifolds. And then the one right here that I'm pulling off is actually for the drive. This is like the main water pickup hose. Basically come from the drive. This hose runs all the way up to here to the thermostat, and then it starts going through the engine. So we're going to remove all these. Sometimes it can be a little stubborn, so just be patient, and just try not to poke any holes in the hoses, because you don't want anything to be leaking once you come back in spring. So now all the hoses are off again. This one goes to the main block. This one right here goes out to the out drive, goes to the back, and these two go up to the manifold. So all I'm going to do is be putting air pressure through all these hoses and seeing if we get any water that comes out of the engine, which we will probably get them out. And again, we're just going to have those out to do it. But before we do put some air pressure, the only one we're going to want to put in is this one up here in the front, just because if you try to put air pressure through that big hose, it's just going to come out of the hole. Now, it's going to be hard for you guys to hear it. But you can obviously see it's coming out of the thermostat housing, so there's a decent amount of water in here. But I can actually hear the water dumping out below the engine where those boat plugs were in. So just do this. It takes a couple more seconds to do, and just save yourself, because to repower an inboard motor, it's not cheap at all. The manifolds usually don't hold a lot of water, so you just want to give a couple pumps and they're pretty much good. Just the main real one that you really want to make sure that you guys blow out is actually going to be this one to the out drive. And you'll see how much pressure. You can actually see the water shooting back, because this whole line is filled with water, goes all the way to the out drive. So you want to try to push out as much water as possible, because a lot of people forget about this, and this hose will just be filled with water the entire time, and it leads to the out drive. Your out drive can have problems too. If it is able to freeze just a little bit, and it can easily crack this hose pretty effortlessly. So you just want to have someone stand out there and let you know if all the water is out of the out drive then. Once we feel confident that we got just about all the water that we possibly can get out of the engine, we're just going to install all the boat plugs back into where they're supposed to go. Again, I just do the same thing. I go for the block first, and then I do the manifolds. That's just how I do it. So you just want to tighten them up, make sure they're nice, tight, and snug. Also, you just want to make sure they have the O-rings on them, especially if yours is set up like this. These blue ones will have like little O-rings around them to just help seal the water. So what we're going to do it then is hop on the other side and install them. Now this, I found most engines, it's sometimes easier to go underneath the engine and get it into, just so you can actually get a little bit more bite and a little bit more grab on it. So I just found that helpful, if that helps you guys for your engines. It's not for every engine, but it is pretty helpful. You can actually see here then I actually break this, so just don't be scared, guys. This does happen. They get brittle, they're plastic. The Volvo Pentas use brass fittings, so if this does happen to you, they're pretty easy to get out. Basically, I just use this tool. You can use like an easy out or any like screw extractor to get them out. Basically, just go in the middle and just spin them out. They'll come out pretty easily. I do recommend people changing them out pretty routinely. That one seemed pretty fine, but I guess it was pretty brittle. I just didn't realize it. So just be careful when that happens. And, again, it's pretty easy to get these out, and you can use the easy out for like screws or bolts that you break off. It's pretty easy. So I'm just going to spin this one out, and I'm going to throw in a new one for this guy. Now that I've got all the boat plugs in, basically what I'm going to do is pump antifreeze into it. So I have this remote that's hooked up to a jug out there that's got antifreeze, and I have this hose, and I can control the flow of it. You guys don't have to have this. You can just use gallons. This just makes my life a lot easier, just because I pump out about 100, 150 IOs winter. So it just makes my life a little bit easier, but you don't have to have this. And you'll see the antifreeze will come out, the main block hose that you just filled up, as well as the thermostat housing. And once you do that, the block is filled. It'll take a decent amount of gallons. And then next thing we're going to fill up is the manifold ones, as well as the drive. And then you're going to have someone stand out there, because when you pump it, the antifreeze is going to come out the backside of the boat. It's going to come through the exhaust and as well through the actual drive itself. So I'm just going to show you guys me filling up one side of the manifold, but you're going to be filling up all three of these hoses. But just so you guys can see, so you're going to start filling this up. Eventually it's going to fill up the riser, and what you're going to see is going to start coming out the back of the boat right here on the exhaust. You can see a little overview of this boat. It was in a pretty nice looking Tahoe bow rider. And again, for the other main hose that's for the drive, you can see it coming right here out of the speedo and the water pickup. And that's how we know we fully winterized the drive. So now it's all done, we can start hooking up all the hoses and start finishing up the winterization, and then basically just tighten down all the hose clamps. And again, guys, I'm not going to show you guys doing like gear lube and stuff like that. I'm just going to show you just doing part of just the engine part. While I'm doing this, the other technician's doing the drive and stuff. So it's kind of hard for me to show you that part. But basically, you want to do gear lube, or at least check it. You want to top off your fluids, like this gear lube monitor I see here. I'll top that off eventually off the camera, as well as, cleaning the bay. You want to stabilize your tanks, add some starch on into your tank. And once you're done all that, guys, you're pretty much finish your winterization. If you want to, you can remove your battery, and if you want to, you can get shrink wrapped or something like that. And a lot of times I tell people to do an oil change as well, but if you barely use it, don't have to do an oil change. If you guys enjoyed the video, please drop a like button down below. Please subscribe. Look forward to making some more videos for you guys, and I'll see you guys in the next one.